In this demo, we'd like to implement a simple shell in Java, which will be an interpreter that will execute commands that will also support grouping commands in pipes, and we should be able to execute commands remotely. So let's just create a new Java project, but why not go first to the Java perspective and then create directly the Java project. Let's call it shell, and since we are going to implement only the server side, I will create a package, but I will call it the package shell as well. So this will be a command line application. So let's just start by creating a program with a main and in here we will start a server, and a TCP server, which will listen for connections, and for that we need to set the port. So let's just say if our arguments it has a length different than 1, then make sure that we have the needed arguments. So let's just create a new string array, and let's just set here a value for the default port to use. Then we'll output that we are gonna listen for commands, and let's say that we close the program by typing exit. So we are gonna scan for commands, and when we will get an exit, then we'll stop. Now we are gonna use a server, so let's just create a server variable in here, and we have to implement this class. So we create the class server in the same package, and we'd like this to be auto-closable, to be used in a try resource. This is not automatically fixed by the UI, but I can say that this should be auto-closable, and it has to implement the close method. Now, because this can throw an exception, I will just handle any exception that I receive and in this case I will output a message which will be the message of the exception, but also I'll exit with an error code. Let's give it a value like 1. In the end, in the finally statement, I make sure that we no, it's not in the finally statement. Let's make it in here. Normally if I say finally, then I'm expecting to be executed also, but I like to exit with this value. So if everything works fine, then I will exit with the value 0, which means okay, the program terminated successfully. Now what I'll do here, I'd like to start the server, so let's just call server.start, and I need a port for that. So let's just parse with integer parse int arguments of 0, because I already set the value in case there is nothing provided. So let's just generate the method which will receive an integer as argument, which will be the port, and this will start the server. And in the meantime, I will after starting the server, I will need to read from the command line. So let's just create a scanner, and this is gonna be a try resource as well, and the scanner will scan the system in, so we'll read from the console. While I'm reading, I will have a while true here. I'm just reading the lines, so I'll try to do something, and in case I have an exception, in my case could be anything, but normally should be an input-output exception, I'll then break my while true. So what I do here, I read a command with the scanner dot read line, dot next line, sorry, and if the command is null or the text exit equals to the command, then I'll break as well. I only implement for the server side, I only implement this exit command. Okay, so this is all that we do in our console. So we just create a server, start it, wait for the command to finish it. Now let's focus on the server side. Because this is auto-closable, I expect that the stop method should be called when it is closed. So I need to have this as well as a public method, because probably I can be interested in starting and stopping the server repeatedly. So sorry, it makes sense to be able to do so, not just in a try resource statement. And then what I need to do here, in my server class, I will need to have a server socket that's gonna listen for incoming connections. So just create here a server socket and just call it socket. Just call this socket. Okay, so when I start it, I will create a new socket with this port. But because this might throw an exception, and I will just throw it away, but because this is gonna run in the same time with the main thread that started the application, I need to create another thread while listening for incoming connections. So let's just create a new thread based on this and then start the thread. So I let my class implement runnable, and I add the unimplemented methods. Now what I do when I stop my server, if my server, my socket, it's not null, this means that the start was called previously, I call the socket, sorry for misspelling it, I call the socket to close. This may throw an exception and I will throw it away as well, and then I will just call the garbage collector. I will tell the garbage collector to deallocate it. Now what I'm doing while listening for incoming connections in my run method, first I'll do this while my socket is not closed. Then what I need to do here, I will try to accept and handle a new incoming connection. In case I have an exception, whatever exception, let's say a checked exception, I will do nothing, so I'll just put continue here for the sake of having a statement, but it will just continue listening for new connections, new incoming connections. So this is the part where I'm listening for getting a new connection, and I need to create an object like a handler for the connection. I will call this object my shell. Okay, my shell, and the shell will work with the accepted socket. So this will be actually the class which will handle the session with the commands received remotely from the user, and I will create a constructor to just accept the connection to work with the accepted connection. So my socket, my server socket, is accepting a connection, and this will handle the session with the user. Now let's go here, and then I will need to store my socket in the class, so I created a field for that. Now the second step that I will need to do would be to actually create reader and writer for the socket. So let's just go in here and create a private. I will read buffered reader. I will read each line at the time, and I'll need to output also a line. so I'll use a print writer for that. It's gonna be my writer. So I created the socket. This is the first step. Now I need to set up the reader, and I will create a buffered reader on top of an input stream reader, which will be on top of the socket.input stream, and I'll use UTF-8, so I don't have to do anything here. This may throw an exception, and I will throw this away. Next, I will create my writer to be a new print writer on top of the socket stream, so I take the output stream of my socket, and then because this is gonna actually run commands, and it has to know what is the current directory, I will just define here a file for the current directory, and I will call this directory, and let's just set up this directory to be a new file of the current directory. So this is the directory where we start the shell, so it's not the home of the user, but nevertheless that's fine, we can use it as a default value. Now, because this connection is accepted while listening for any new connections from the client, this means that we don't have to block the processing here while waiting to receive commands from the current connection. So in order not to do so, we need to create another thread here and run it in parallel with the one that accepted this connection. So let's just create a new thread, run on this, and just start the thread. Let our class implement runnable so that it will provide the run method for the thread, and then focus on what we need to do. Now, in the run method, we will wait for incoming commands. If the user type exit, for instance, then we will close the session. So why not write the same message to the user, but in this case I'm using my writer to do a print. I'm not using the print line itself, because this has a drawback. If we like to test it from Windows, or to use it from Windows, because of the line separator, if I have backslash, it's fine, and understand this is a new line. But if I output a print line from Linux to Windows, it will only contain the backslash n, and a Windows system will not be able to handle correctly the new line. So let's just put backslash r backslash n, so that any Linux will skip the backslash r, but Windows will know to go to the next line. When I'm outputting to the writer, I'd like to make sure that this will actually go on the client side, so I flush the stream. Now, what I need to do, while my socket is not closed, socket is closed, I'm checking if I can get a command. So I will do a try here, and if I catch any exception, I don't care if it's output exception or whatever, if I get an exception, then I will break, because I'm not able to use the socket anymore. Then I check if my reader has available data, so if it's ready to read. If it's ready to read, then I will take my commands. I can receive a pipe, for instance, of commands with the reader read line. Then I'll try to execute this, but I make sure that I will not break my execution because of that. So if I receive an exception while trying to execute, then I will just continue. but I have to send the exception to the user. So I use the writer, I call the method print, and I will send the message of the exception. I have to make sure that I go on the next line, so I will add the line separator. Then I flash the writer, and I will just say continue here, because anyway it's continuing anyway, but just to see that this is where I take it again. So as you can see, if I will get an exception while trying to read from the socket, this will actually exit the run method and will end the thread. Otherwise, if I was able to receive the command but I'm not able to execute it, I have to make sure it will not break the current execution of the thread. So I then output the result to the socket, and then this will be all. So what I do here, I'm expecting to execute and receive the lines of the pipe, of the commands. So I'll just have a method execute, which will take the commands as argument and will return what the commands have outputted. So then what I have to do next, if I receive something, because it's possible that I have a command without any output, but if I have an output, I will just go with all the lines and I will call the writer to do a print, not a print line, with a line, and make sure that I add the line separator even for Windows, and then in the end I make sure that everything goes to the client side, so I flash the string. Okay, that's fine with up to this point. So what I'm doing in my shell is just I take a socket that was accepted by the server, I get a reader and a writer for the socket, and I start a new thread to process the commands that I'm receiving from that socket. So if the socket was not closed, while the socket is not closed, I check if I have something to read, not just a new line. I might be able to read some choice and wait for the line separator, but anyway, then I'm reading the line, I'm trying to execute that command, and then I output the result. Now, what I have to do in the execute method, this is the core of my shell. This is implementing the functionality. So first of all, let's create a list of string. This is going to be the lines, and first I say that I don't have anything on that. Now I will implement some internal commands. For instance, if the user will type exit, so the commands will be equal to exit. Okay, I can do a trim here because I don't care about any spaces. Okay, so then I'll say socket close, and I will return lines. Okay, this may throw an exception, I will throw it away. Then I can put an else, but okay, just for the sake of the procedural calling, I will say an else here, but it's not needed anymore. Now the idea is that I need to be able to change the current directory. So what if my commands starts with change directory? I can say commands.trim, and if so, I will split the commands and take the arguments. So I'll take the commands .trim, remove the unnecessary spaces, and then split them by any number of spaces. So I'm using the space in regular expressions, and I tell the split command, which understands regular expressions, to split by any number of spaces the arguments. So in this case I will have to have exactly 2 arguments. So if I have 2 arguments, then the directory would be a new file, and the path will be arguments of index 1.3. So in this case it was okay, but anyway I will have to return a null output as before. So this is how I handle internal commands like exit, like change directory, which are not executing any command on the disk, any file on the disk. But for the rest, because I'm not going to support the definition of variables, exporting the values in the context and so on, this will not be the case for now. For the rest of the calls, I will try to find them on the disk and execute them accordingly. So what I do next, I will just iterate with a command, and I will take the commands, trim them, and split by the pipe separator, which has also a special meaning in the regular expressions context, syntax I mean. So I have to quote it because this is the simple pipe char and not the OR symbol in the regular expression syntax. Then, so what I'm doing now, it's just taking each the command within a pipe, if I receive the pipe. If not, it will be only a single command, and try to execute the command. So I will need to have a process builder, let's call it builder. In order to execute the command, I have to create a process builder with the arguments of the command. So I trim the current command, and I will split the command by any number of spaces. So this will be actually the arguments of the command that the process builder can launch. Then I need to set the builder to know what's the current directory, and I already have the context for the current directory inside my class. Then I need to start the process, so I'll create a process by calling builder.start. Okay. Then if this is not the first command in the pipe, I will need to write for the process the output of the previous command. So I check if my lines it's not null. This means that I have something from the previous command. Initially the lines are null, but then I will take the output of the current command in the lines array. And then what I need to do here, I need to write, so I will create a print writer. I will then create a print writer, and the process has an output stream, so I will call process.get output stream. Although it's called output stream because it's a stream on which I can write, it is actually the input of the process. So what I'm writing on that stream is going to be what the process receives as input. And then I will take each line inside my lines, and I will then call the writer to print line of this line. I don't have to use the same approach with the \r\n the line delimiter, because I'm on a Linux. I will only call this on Linux, and even if I call this on Windows, the print line will adapt to the line separator of the system, so I don't have to worry about it. I only have to worry about the line separators that I send to the client, because the client may be on a different platform. So this is something that even Windows understands, and Linux as well. So it's fit for what I need on both cases. In the end, I will then close the stream. So I call the writer.close. I might change this and use the try resource statement as well, but nevertheless. So now I need to create a reader that will take the lines from the current outputted by the current command. Let's just create a lines reader, our own class, and I will then create the class, but I will create it inside my shell. So I'll have an enclosing class here. I will create this, and of course I need to read the lines from the stream of the process. I'm creating the constructor as such. So although it is called input stream because it's a stream from which I can read, it's actually the output stream of the process, where the process is outputting the result, it's outputting its data. So let's go here. This will be the stream, and what I need to do but let's just focus on that later. Just continue executing the current command. So I will create a thread, and I like to execute the reader. It goes like this. Okay, let's just let the reader implement runnable and make sure that we implement runnable with the reader. Okay, so the idea is as follows. I need to execute to launch the process, but in parallel, in background, to collect all the output of the process. So in order not to block the execution of the current thread, which is actually running the process, I will create in parallel another thread. So let's just wait for the thread to finish. First start the thread, then wait for the thread to finish to join with the thread that was calling this one. Okay, this may throw an interrupted exception as well, but we don't care. If something goes wrong, then I will continue with the next command. I mean, not with this, not with the next command in the current pipe, but in here I will output the exception and wait for another command to execute. And then I need to wait for the process to finish, so I call the process wait for. In the end, I will take the lines that were actually read by the lines reader, and I then create this method. So as you can see, what I'm doing in order to execute the commands that I received, that may be a pipe, I'm handling internal commands, then I split by the pipe delimiter, I create a process builder with the arguments of the current command, set the current directory where to work, start a process, output the previous write to the current process the output of the previous command, if any, then create a reader, start a thread to collect with this reader the output of the current command, collect it, and then store it so that it may be used by the next command in the pipe. Now let's just focus on our lines reader, and this will be actually finishing our implementation. What I need to do here, first of all, I'll need to read with a buffered reader. I need to read from that stream. So let's just create our buffer reader as being a new buffer reader on top of an input stream reader, which will be on top of the stream without any encoding argument. Then we'll need to have a list of strings, which will be our lines. So make sure that we have it as a field in the class, because we will collect it in the run method and return in the get lines. So let's just create a new, a new array list of string. I'm using Java 8, but nevertheless make sure that it will run with some older version. So here I'm returning the lines, and in the run method of the thread, I will try to read from my string. So while true, I'll try to read. So I'll do something like a try. If I get an exception, normally should be an input-output exception, but I don't care. I will break on any exception. Then what I do here, I read the line. So I call the reader.readLine. If the line is null, this means that the output was closed. Then I'll break. Otherwise, okay, let's just put an else here, because just for the sake of the code organizing stuff. Anyway, otherwise I will add the lines to the list of my lines. So this is all that I do in order to collect the lines. I'm waiting for the stream to close. On any exception, I will break. On an stream close, if the stream is closed and I will not be able to read anything, that I will break, then I will break again, and otherwise I will collect the lines. So now let's just go into our program and start our program. So I will run this as a Java application, and as you can see, it says that it's running and it's waiting for commands. If I will go here in my terminal window and I will connect, okay, let's just edit this a bit so that you will be able to see better. So let's just use 16 for that, maybe too much, but anyway. So if I will first, let's just do an ifconfig. Okay, not like that, an ifconfig, so that I know what's my address, and I will just copy this. Okay, I'll do a telnet. I'm connecting to the local host on the default port. It is connected. If I do a Unix name -a, it says this is my version. If I'll do a who -a, then I see what are the users connected to the system. If I do a who -a and I like to graph for the user called Julian, I see that it's able to execute pipes. But now let's just test it. I'm connecting from the same host. Then let's just run a command from Windows, and here I will do a telnet on this. Okay, it's not the correct value. Let's just copy the value again. So it was this one, this was the IP, so let's just copy this and go to my telnet and try to connect on this socket. Okay, if I spell it telnet correctly. So as you can see, it is connected. If I run the same set of commands, I see this is the version of the system. If I do a who -a, then I see what are the connections that are active to my system. And if I try to do a who -a and grep for Julian, I see that I have two open connections. Okay, so as you may see before, if I change the first, if I list the current directory, I see that this is where I started the application. If I change the current directory, okay, I will not be able to execute this. If I change the current directory to root and do a personal working directory again, I see that I'm in the root folder. If I do a list on that, I see what the file system structure. If I do a list -all, I see also the parent and the current directory, because it's not containing any other folders, any other hidden resources. But if I do a list with details, I see that this is the structure. If I do a change directory again, I see that because my interpreter is the one who's handling the change directory, it doesn't have the same behavior as it's supposed to have on Linux. So basically it's not able to take me to the home directory of the user because I don't have anything implemented for that. So I changed the directory without any argument, and as you can see, if I do that in my shell, when I execute the command on the execute method, if I have not specified a second argument, if I don't have an argument for the change directory, then I will do nothing. So this is up to me how I handle the internal command change directory. Nevertheless, if I do a witch and search for change directory, I see nothing. But if I do a witch and check for echo, I see that there is an echo command, and this is the path. I can try to output some variables, but as you can see, the support for replacing the value of variables, it's something internal to the interpreter. So the echo command actually output what the interpreter tells it to do. So there is no support for context variables of any type in my case, because this is not implemented yet by my interpreter. Therefore, if I execute the environment variable, I see the variables, they are available to the system, but my interpreter is not using any of them, and it's not replacing. If I try to, okay, I'm not able to clean this from Telnet console. That's why I had to press enter. Not able to erase what I wrote by mistake. But anyway, if I try to echo a variable, my shell is not replacing the value of the variable before calling the echo method. This is the next step, of course, if we'd like to provide a shell that's working with context variables and that's able to handle complex syntax like if, while, for, and so on. But it's not the case of we didn't have this in mind. The idea was just to show you how we can implement a simple shell that's able to execute commands remotely via socket, and how the shell can actually support like redirection from of an output of a command to some other commands in a pipe. So that's all. Thanks. Okay, first the last thing, if I type exit here, then it will the server will close the connection, so I will close the session. I have a running session here as well, so I may close it also. And of course, if I go in my console and type exit, I got an exception, but nevertheless it was closed. Yeah, so that's all. Thanks for watching.